I'm Mark Boris and this is Straight Talk.
Skye Nicolson, welcome to Straight Talk.
People have been asking me about this fight next week.
There's been a bit of shit talk going on.
There has been a bit of shit talk going on. I just think it's so important as a fighter to not let emotion take over. Whatever she says, whatever happens in the build-up before that first bell rings, I'm going to box her exactly the same.
I don't think you ever met your brother, unfortunately, but he was a great boxer.
Yeah.
How much of that has influenced you to become a fighter?
I had two brothers that passed away in a car accident in 1994. I was born in 1995, so I never ever met Jamie and Gavin. But I obviously grew up in a household that celebrated their lives every day. I feel like I knew them too, but I feel like I lost them just like everyone else did. When I started going into the boxing gym, my oldest brother, Alan, he said, "You got to watch her. She's actually really good." There's glimpses of Jamie in her. Same southpaw stance, counter boxer, and I couldn't imagine my life going any other way. All of those 1% is what gives me the confidence to go into the fight knowing you can't beat me because I'm my best me and my best me doesn't get beat.
Skye Nicolson, welcome to Straight Talk. Pretty exciting,
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I'm excited about next week.
So am I.
You must be. Hopefully you are. How's training going?
Really, really good.
Yeah. Weight's good?
Very good. I know fighters pretty much always say it's been the best camp, but it really actually has been the best camp. Yeah, touch wood. One more week to go, but it's just been very smooth sailing. Yeah.
Can we just pick apart a good camp? So what do you mean by that? So I guess, you're always training, et cetera, get that. But like 12 weeks out, when you start for prepping for a fight in
about 10 weeks.
10 weeks, okay.
Yeah.
So just take me through the camp.
So
what are we looking at?
I came home for Christmas, which was a really nice break, away from the boxing gym.
You live in the UK though?
I am living in the UK.
Yep.
So I came back to Australia for Christmas, enjoyed the Gold Coast summer. It was amazing. And I feel like I went back and started camp in such a good headspace. I think I needed that time away from the boxing gym. And yeah, camp can sometimes feel like it drags and it can be a little bit long. This has flown by. Like the weeks were just flying. It was coming around so fast. And I was just feeling better and better every week. I didn't have a bad spar. We were sparring top girls all camp and you could barely fault around, which was refreshing. There's definitely been camps where things just haven't worked in sparring and you kind of go into fights thinking like, am I ready? Yeah. Just like those like question marks a little bit, but there's absolutely no question marks for this fight. Like I've never felt better prepared.
You don't look. You're not marked up or anything. You look amazing. I guess you're pretty young still, but like you are quite. It's quite amazing. I was just looking at your skin, etc. Like you're not beaten up at all. So you have, and you just come off a camp. So,
yeah.
And you just mentioned sparring. Could you just take us through though what sparring looks like? So one, where do you get your spar partners from? Are they from overseas or are they local? How hard is it to get a spar partner, given that you're the world champion in your division, the WBC? So, like, how can you get someone up to your level?
Yeah.
How do you pick a spar partner, for example, that's similar to the size of your opponent or style of your opponent? So, show me how that looks.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. I actually think we've found it easier to get sparring partners since becoming world champion. I think people want to test themselves against a world champion and say they've sparred a world champion. So the last 12 months has probably been less difficult to get in good sparring, which has been refreshing. It's been nice.
In Australia or?
No. So I
definitely
do
in England.
Yeah, I do my training camp in England.
Yeah.
We spar a range of different styles, but obviously girls want sparring partners that I guess have the same stance, similar build to the opponent that we're preparing for. We spar a mix and a range of ages, weights, aggressive girls, less aggressive girls.
So counter punches versus somebody coming at you all the time.
Exactly, just so we're kind of prepared for anything. I think with my style of fighting, you never really know what approach the opponent's going to come in with. If they're if they're going to be aggressive or if they're going to try and sit back and make me come to them, because obviously I'm known as a counter boxer.
But by the way, everyone should know that you're a lefty, so you're a southpaw.
I'm a southpaw, yes.
So your opponent, is she orthodox?
She's orthodox,
Okay, so...
She changes a little bit though. She switches stance sometimes, yeah.
So what are you expecting? You're as a southpaw, what are you expecting from a right-hander?
A right-hander in general, or the one I'm fighting next week?
Well, you don't have to give too many things away, but just a right-hander in general, just to give our audience a bit of a sense of, what you're being careful of, what you don't want to expose yourself to.
I feel like as a southpaw, you do have a little bit of an advantage, being the fact that you are standing in the opposite stance to the way that most fighters are. So most of the opponents of my next opponent would have been orthodox, right-handed. So when they're standing opposite each other, everything's the same, whereas...
You're trying to get your right foot outside her...
Whereas it opens right up when it's southpaw versus orthodox. So your backhand's a lot further away.
Yeah.
And there's a battle for that lead side.
Yes.
To set up the backhand. But for me, I'm a little bit of an awkward southpaw.
How's that?
I don't mind being on the inside.
Wow.
So they come in with a game plan to be taking my lead side off me, and I love it. I'm happy to be there, and not a lot of southpaws are. Yeah,
because you're sitting right in their right hand.
Yeah.
I mean, they're straight. They could come straight down the barrel.
Yeah, but they just can't find me.
Yeah. So you good at movement? Is that your thing?
Yeah, I'd say
you move a lot.
I feel like I have very good reflexes, reaction time, speed, and footwork. I think that would be my biggest strengths, and I would say my opponents not going to very easily find southpaw sparring that has those same strengths.
Well, especially at your level.
Yes.
Yeah, like you might find a southpaw, but there might be a palooka, not necessarily very good.
Yes.
Or not very polished at the craft. So you've been able to get, so in your case, your training camp is in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Whereabouts in the UK? Which part of England are we talking about?
Southeast London, Kent. So it's like just a little bit out of London.
And you're in Matchroom, that's Eddie Hearn's gang.
Yeah.
Who finds does he get involved in finding spar partners for you, or is that just your team?
Yeah, me and my team.
Yep.
So my coach, Eddie Lamb, it's very confusing. There's a whole lot of Eddies in England. It's a thing. My coach, Eddie Lamb, organises most of my sparring for me. And that ranges from girls from all over the UK and also girls coming in internationally.
From Europe, probably.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not always, but yes, in this camp, we had a fly-in from Denmark who we've used before. She's very good. She's had 100 amateur fights and she's an undefeated professional, same weight. So she's great to work with, very sharp. But yeah, we use a range. We use amateur girls as well. They're very sharp. We usually have a couple of amateur girls come in at the same time so they can share the rounds because obviously they're more accustomed to 3-round fights. So
would it be normal for you, for example, would it be normal for you, for example, to do 3 rounds with this individual and that person jumps out, or 2 rounds, then the next person jumps in?
Yeah.
So you're not fighting someone, you're not sparring with someone so they get exhausted, because that's a bit dumb. That does make sense. So you're just, your team is picking 3 freshies to take you through for maybe 7 or 8 rounds, 9 rounds, whatever.
10
rounds, yeah. So you're taking yourself to the whole 10 rounds.
Not every single spar.
Yeah.
We do maybe 3 or 4 10-round spars across the whole camp.
Oh wow. Okay.
And the rest are usually about 6 to 8 rounds, mainly 8. We don't do a lot of 6-rounders, maybe more towards the end. We did 6 yesterday to finish camp. It was the last spar, actually with an Australian girl, Sarah Gillenan, shout out to her. But yeah, so it's always ranging. We'll do 8 rounds with one girl sometimes, especially pros, or we'll do 10 rounds with 2 or 3 different girls that are coming in fresh, and I just stay in for the rounds.
But is there a big advantage for you, do you think, training in England in terms of sparring? Because,
Yes.
access to that sort of level of spar partners is pretty hard here in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Boys and girls.
Yeah.
It's difficult, particularly in the heavyweight division for the boys. It's nearly impossible. But like, do you think that's a big advantage for you? And is that one of the reasons you moved to the UK?
Of course, definitely. There's just a lot more opportunity there. Unfortunately, women's boxing is still very small here. We've got a big country, and then we've got a small population of women fighters that are spread across this big country. So if we were all in one area where you could all get to each other, it would probably be a lot stronger, the women's boxing in Australia. But unfortunately, we've got great girls in Perth, Melbourne, Sydney, Tasmania, Brisbane. It makes it very hard because you can't be all working together constantly.
What's the boxing community like in Australia for females? I mean, is it a proper community? You all know each other, you hang out.
Yeah, everyone knows each other. It's a very, very small community.
You got a WhatsApp group?
No. A lot of the girls fight each other in Australia as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, not so much me. I've only fought as a professional one Australian girl from Tasmania. Last time I was here in 2022. But obviously a lot of the Australian girls are fighting each other. So again, it makes it very hard in finding sparring when they're all potential opponents as well.
So what about the community in England then? Have you been able to see? I'm noticing a little bit of an English accent in there.
Oh, leave it out.
Now she's going to go real Aussie on me.
I am.
Yeah. Great.
G'day, how's it going?
Yeah. I'm sure they say to you, "Oh, wow, you sound so Australian." But I'm going to have to give you a little bit of stick here. It's got a little bit of posh going on there. I said it to you outside.
I think I'm just a posh Australian.
Oh no! Oh my God! It could be her new nickname, Posh.
Is there such thing as a posh Australian? Not really.
You just said it then. Listen to your voice.
I have British parents.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's a little bit of an excuse, I feel.
But are they living there or they're living here?
No, they live here.
They live here, yeah.
They think I'm crazy to want to live there.
Do they? Yeah, well, they came here to get away from the joint. But the community over there is pretty strong, like the female boxing community. Yeah.
It's a bigger community and a smaller country.
Yeah.
In terms of size.
Yeah, therefore much closer.
Yeah.
Yeah, physically closer.
So the availability and I guess opportunity to spar lots of different girls is a lot easier. But even Raven Chapman, my last opponent, we're both based in London. We'd sparred each other before. But you don't really want to be having that all the time. You don't really want your opponents having had too much training time and experience with you, really.
Yeah, well, I've often wondered about it. What's that like when you've sparred with someone and the next thing you know, it's like headgear off.
Yeah.
Let's rip into it now and I know what you've got, you know what I've got, or maybe I haven't shown you everything, but you got a bit of an idea.
Exactly. You always kind of have to take sparring with a pinch of salt. You're not always necessarily going into a spar to win a spar. Well, I'm not. You're working on different things, trying to get off different shots that you've been working on in drills and on the pads. While you do have, I guess, that opportunity to feel each other out and have some idea of what it would be like to fight them, you never really know until you're in there for the fight because sparring. And I feel like that's said quite a lot in the boxing world.
Can I ask you about this? Do you mind? Just for your audience, I've been in a lot of sparring sessions, both watching and participating. And sometimes some of the guys, most of the guys, start teeing off on each other. It just takes one person to just
land a good shot.
Yeah, and then maybe just a little bit too serious, a little bit too hard.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, well, there's a return, and then the return happens, and then sometimes you see the coaches, come on, like pull it back and stuff like that. Maybe can you explain how that works? Does that ever happen with you?
Yeah.
I mean, and how do you constrain yourself or restrain yourself from, you're a fighter.
Yeah.
And you're got to have a natural instinct to be a fighter. I mean, we can't describe you as someone who can turn the craft on and off because that sounds a bit too mechanical. You are naturally a fighter who knows how to fight. There's plenty of people who know how to fight who aren't fighters.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to name them, but I know guys who know the skill, but they're not natural fighters. Therefore, they never get to the levels you get to. To get to the levels you get to, you got to be naturally. You got to have the skills, and you got to be a natural fighter. How do you manage to turn that thing off and turn that thing on? Not like at sparring, especially if you get clipped or get buzzed a bit or something, like you lose a bit of judgment.
I think there's certain times and certain spars for, I guess, what you're working on and what you want to achieve from that spar. Sometimes it is a very 50-50 competitive spar, and you maybe do have to turn it on a bit more, and you do have to try and hurt them to slow them down or whatever it might be. And there'll be other spars where you might be levels above the other person and you do have to hold back, and there's no point.
That's practice.
Exactly. There's no point hurting them and getting them out of there, because then you're not getting the rounds you need.
Yeah. Because do you worry about getting injured in that if you lose a little bit of your composure? Because composure is pretty important in the game, in your game.
Yeah.
Most people don't think that, but it is. Do you ever worry? Because that's when you can get hurt.
I think it's really important as a fighter to not let emotion take over. And that can be very, very difficult for a lot of fighters. Even people have been asking me about this fight next week.
Because there's been a bit of shit talk going on.
There has been a bit of shit talk going on, which is
She's sort of undermining you.
Yeah.
I don't like
it's
it.
Not
As an Aussie, I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, that's what people have been saying to me. Like, how do you feel about this? Like, I just think it's so important. Like, no matter what's said before the fight, no matter what, like, how much she pokes the bear, whatever is said, I'm not going to fight her any other way, if that makes sense.
So you're not going to let her influence your mindset?
Exactly. Whatever she says, whatever happens in the build-up, what happens before that first bell rings, I'm going to box her exactly the same.
But how do you block that out? I mean, how do you keep your mindset on track as to the way, as to your strategy?
I think that's what makes an elite fighter. Not letting emotion dictate how you fight. Staying focused on the job, staying focused on the game plan, and not allowing anything to allow you to stray from that.
It's very purposeful, though. It's
yes.
I mean, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but like there is a lot of entertainment value in boxing. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
And we saw only last week the Thurman Jarvis sort of before the event.
The showmanship.
The showmanship. And like to some extent that builds up the the impact of the night, and you've got to sell seats. It's about pay-per-view, etc. Also getting people to the event, but it is really about pay-per-view. And now we're Thurman and Zoo in the build-up. How do you go about that process? And what does Eddie say to you? Like, does he actually give you guidance? Say, hey, listen, we need a little bit of action here, a little bit of excitement. I mean, how's it work?
He doesn't say that to me because I think he knows that I'm never going to be a shit talker, and I'm never going to, I guess, try and say things to sell a fight. I feel like I personally don't need to do that, and I'm aware that goes on, and that a lot of what is said before fights is to sell a fight. But that's why it's important to make sure you don't take any of that into the ring with you, because most of it is just said as showmanship.
Because after the fight, they always shake hands and everybody's happy again.
Yeah.
Because the environment within which you're fighting is a lot different to the Australian local domestic scene. And you're part of the is it Riyadh? What do we call this? The Saudi the matchroom,
Riyadh season?
Whatever it is, sort of like part of what's going on over there in Europe or the Middle East. It's a lot more professional.
Yeah,
it looks a lot more serious. And by the way, the level of the fighters, they're world champions. So, and there's something on the line, something big on the line, particularly in your case. And then when you fight on the Eddie Hearns, under the Eddie Hearns banner or the Matchroom banner, they are extremely professional. I've had Eddie on the show actually, and like the way he operates, and I'm not having a crack at the Australian guys, but Eddie's really professional. It doesn't seem to me to be as much shit talk going on with those guys as there is in a domestic environment. How important is it, do you think, for boxing generally, to compete with the UFC, for example, that we maintain our composure and we don't turn it into a circus?
Yeah, I feel like there is definitely always a line with all of that stuff, and it almost crosses over into that misfits world a little bit. I don't know if you've seen, that's a big thing in the UK and the US at the moment.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, boxing's boxing, and if it's a good fight, it's going to sell itself. Like my fight next week, it's 2 undefeated fighters, both had big amateur pedigrees as well, both won medals on the world stage, and both not really been anywhere near close contests as professionals. That should sell a fight.
Yeah, on its own.
Exactly.
It doesn't need any theatrics.
Yeah, it doesn't need theatrics. She's bringing some theatrics, but in my opinion, it's not needed. And I think good fights should sell without that stuff. I understand its place in the boxing world, and it is entertaining, and people love it, and it gets them excited about fights.
The crowd loves it.
They do. And I think there's certain personalities and fighters that it suits more than others. You never heard Jeff Horn slate or disrespect an opponent ever.
Or Jeff Fennick.
Jeff Fennick.
Never.
There's so many. So many. There's a lot of fighters, they let their boxing do the talking. They let their fighting do the talking. You don't need all of the theatrics. And I feel, for me personally, I'm the same.
As a Queensland, is Jeff Horn someone that you look up to?
Yeah, I've known Jeff for a long time. I was actually just thinking before when you were speaking about George.
Kambosos.
George Kambosos. Yeah. There was a trip. It was like Queensland and New South Wales development squad, and we went to Russia in, I'm going to say 2009, 2010. And George Kambosos, Jeff Horn, myself. Who else was there? It's quite funny, like some of the names that were on that squad. We were so young. I would have been 14. George probably would have been about 16. Yeah, and to kind of see that 360 of us being professional world champions all these years later, it's really cool.
What do you think about it? What do you think about our Australian athletes, and how do the people over, let's say, for example, in the UK, what do they think about us as an athletic nation, particularly in boxing? I mean, do people say, well, small country, you guys do so well?
I think for our small population, Australia is unbelievable at sport, and I think they do have that reputation. I think the fighters, especially in the last few years, with the likes of George Kambosos, Jai Opataya.
Oh, Jai's a beast.
Unbelievable. But that's kind of really put in boxing on the map. And it's constantly said that Australian boxing's going so well at the moment. Australian boxing's got all these world champions and this and that. We're entering a new golden era and blah, blah, blah. So I feel like we are known for, I guess, producing good, tough. I think we've definitely got tough, that label. If you're fighting an Australian fighter, you know it's going to be a tough fight. I feel like I haven't got that label personally.
As being tough?
Yeah.
Why?
I think because I haven't had to really show any toughness yet as a professional.
Because I remember this.
People doubt my toughness.
The way this is said about Tim, if you remember, a couple of years ago, but he has displayed his toughness, obviously.
He has, yeah.
But they used to say that about Tim because he was always real clean fighter, very sparkly, used to knock everyone out, win in the second or third round, etc. Can I ask you, because I think it's important for your audience to understand what you mean by toughness. So we're not talking about toughness where, you know, you get hit in the head 20 times and not go down. Because that's sort of like a stupid toughness. I mean, I don't want to disrespect him, but like Jeff Harding style, I'm not talking about that type of toughness. I'm talking. What do you mean by toughness? Though? Because there's a fine line between toughness and stupidity in boxing.
Yes, I agree.
What do you mean by toughness?
I mean mental toughness probably more than anything. If the fight gets tough and you've got to bite down on your gum shield and go for it. The cards are against you. You're going into the final couple of rounds.
Jeff Horn, what he did to Pacquiao.
Yeah.
Best example. I think it was round 9 or something.
Round 9, he was basically out on his feet.
The referee went up in the corner and he said, if you don't show me something, I'm going to stop the fight.
Yeah. And that's literally exactly what I mean by Australian fighters being known as
Well,
tough.
can you explain that though? What do you think? What's going through people's mind? What's going through your mind in those situations?
Toughness isn't something that can be taught. I think it has to be inside of you. And I feel like you don't even know your own toughness until you're in deep waters and it's sink or swim. And I think Australian fighters are known to swim and keep swimming.
What do you think it is? What is that about us? I mean, they say it about Mexicans all the time. That's sort
Mexicans are tough. Yeah.
But it's sort of understandable. There's probably 170 million Mexicans live there, and they're a mix between native people and Spanish people, I guess. So they've probably got some sort of genetic mix going on that's pretty tough.
And they've probably had hard lives, a lot of them.
Correct. They're all poor.
Whereas Australians, not really.
No,
I feel like we're quite spoiled.
Well, you got
here.
a posh voice, so.
I'm a posh Australian, so I haven't had it tough.
So where do you get? Therefore, where do you get it from?
I don't. That's what I'm saying, though. I don't think it's
Do you
something
ever
you
examine it in yourself? You ever examined it in yourself?
Where it comes from?
Do you ever think to yourself, am I really tough?
I was thinking yesterday at the beach when we were fighting these really aggressive waves that it might have something to do with that.
Because we're used to that stuff.
That's why Australians are tough, because they fight for their life.
Well,
they go swimming in the beach every weekend.
Dana White said to me something like, no wonder you guys are so tough. You got the most poisonous snakes in the world. You got the biggest crocodiles in the world, the biggest sharks in the world, the most poisonous spider. And he actually said that, and we take all that stuff for granted, of course.
Yeah.
Especially up where you come from in
you
Queensland.
Don't even think about it.
You don't even think about it. Box jellyfish, all that sort of stuff. Maybe it's because we're just born into those environments.
Yeah.
But that's what I was sort of saying before about the difference between someone who is a born fighter, and I think a born fighter is someone who actually has that mental toughness and can do what Jeff Horn did in that ninth round when the referee said, listen, if you don't show me something, it's over. And he got it and definitely showed him something. And, and there's been a litany of Australians who have shown that.
Yes.
And do you think that if you ever... Do you think that has ever happened to you? Have you ever felt that in a fight where, my God, if I don't show something?
Not as a professional.
As an amateur?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in spars, there's been hard sparring sessions where I've had to bite down and
get
through hard spars.
We have a big female audience, and a lot of them wouldn't really have any understanding of that. So what do you mean by the bite down? Like,
I think remembering your why in those hard moments is so important. I think knowing yourself. I think for me, I want to be able to live with myself. That's why I go into fights so confident, because I leave no stone unturned. The 1%
in the prep?
Yeah. The 1% are so important. You know that at the end of this, it's only you getting in there, and it's only you that you have to live with afterwards. So
your corner can't help you.
No.
Except in between the rounds, but other than that, they can't help it.
But they can't fight the fight for you.
Yeah.
You've got to fight the fight yourself. And I think sometimes my confidence can be confused with arrogance by people, but it's really not. I have so much confidence because I know I'm putting my best self in that ring on that day. And I've done absolutely everything to make sure that I'm going to be the best version of myself in there.
Are you a perfectionist?
I am a perfectionist.
In everything?
In everything.
That's your thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
It can be a blessing and a curse.
Yep. Take me through the curse part first.
You can't be perfect all the time. Things can't be perfect. Life happens. There's so many things and moving parts to everything all the time. And I pick apart every little thing I do. And I'll have 125 rounds of sparring, and 120 of them were literally perfect, and I'll be focused on those 5 rounds that weren't.
And is your process, let's say you did 10 rounds today and 8 were good, 2 were shit, and you'll sit down and when do you start thinking about those 2 rounds? Is it something you wake up
from the second I get out of the ring?
What about when you go to bed at night, when you go to sleep?
Still thinking about it.
And does it sort of impact your sleep? Can it impact your sleep or your rest?
No, because then the other side of me kicks in. That is my preparation needs to be perfect.
So that's pretty amazing though. Like when
The
you
switch.
think that's pretty amazing though.
Yeah.
Being able to that switch or turn the switch off and turn it on,
Yes.
turn the volume up, turn the volume down.
Yeah.
Because this is just noise. You know, these things tend to be noise. Like
Yes.
someone like me, 2 a.m, Jimmy Cricket gets on top and he starts rubbing his fucking legs and I'm saying, get the fuck out of here. But I can't. It's hard to control. I got to get up.
Yeah.
You know, move around a bit and sort of do something just to get it out of my head. But the ability to be able to turn things off, turn things up and turn things down,
Yes.
whether you're in the ring or whether you're in bed trying to stop analysing something because you know it's more important that you rest,
Yes.
that's a big skill. Have you always had that skill? Is there something you've had to work on and
I think
develop?
it's something that has developed and something I've perfected over the years.
Consciously?
Yeah. I think the Whoop Club,
Hey.
gang. I feel like that has been a big positive influence on.
But it can also drive you crazy too, though. Like
when you're a perfectionist, yes.
Like this morning, like I tell you, I did a quick story, nothing to do with anything. But I had to go for dinner with some of my business partners from overseas, and I never eat dinner after a certain time. We ended up going to a restaurant, ate dinner late.
Oh, didn't eat in your daylight hours,
mate.
No
I
good.
put it on this morning. I didn't have enough sleep. This morning, I just opened up my app and oh my god, it's yellow.
Not a yellow recovery.
Yellow, yes, yellow recovery and heart rate variability, the whole thing. I mean, oh my god, like my
you
world.
ate late.
Huh?
Because you ate late.
Yeah, I ate late, and I didn't sleep properly. My heart rate, my rested heart rate was up, and blah blah blah. And but I know where you're coming from with that sort of stuff. These are blessings. I actually think I take the view if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So
I agree.
that's the only thing in my life. And I'd use it more for business performance, etc. But you know, and I want to perform well. I want to talk to people like you today, and I had someone in before you, and you know, I have a long day. And I'm getting, you know, I'm maturing in age. So I want everything in my favor, and it's great to hear a young person like you. I mean, take the side you're an athlete, and at a world title level, but just as a young person, being sort of obsessed.
Yeah, prioritizing
with that's a better
rest
word.
and recovery.
Rest, recovery, and measurement.
Yes, balancing.
Yeah, and does the measurement assist you to get over those moments when you can start to obsess about something and you know that you should stop thinking about it and go to bloody sleep?
Yes, because now it's bedtime routine now.
Something else is doing it for you. And it'll tell you in the morning when you first get up and you sit down and you have a quick look at what happened last night or the previous 24 hours. That's pretty amazing for a young woman or young man to be able to – and I think you represent the modern athlete. The modern fighting athlete. I mean, like if I go back to the years of, you know, Jeff and all those guys, Fennick and all those guys, and all of them, I knew them all quite well. I still know them quite well. That discipline never existed, you know. It was just mere instinct and basic talent.
Yeah.
Tough dudes who had great skills, but nothing else was measured.
Yeah.
Sure, they knew how to lose weight, to make weight. But it was an extreme environment. They would just stop drinking water, stop eating food, literally for 5-6 days.
There's so much more science now.
So let's just talk about your team in terms of all these other things. So, you know, we talked about the sparring, et cetera. That's important for your prep. You're a 10 week and you're doing the UK and you get access to all these people. But let's just talk a little bit about, you know, I said to you, how's your weight? You know, you said, you know, it's on track. But there's a little bit more science associated with weight. Who do you have in your team that helps you sort of make weight, make sure your nutrition's right, so you're not making weight but losing muscle? You know, what do you do? What's your process?
I've worked with a lot of nutritionists over the years, and the perfectionist that I am, I've kind of developed the exact approach that I need. So I know exactly for me. I know exactly what I need to weigh a week out from the weigh-in. Exactly what I need to weigh a month out from the weigh-in.
Is it because you've done it so many times?
I've done it so many times.
Yeah.
And I've been boxing at the same weight for years and years and years and years as well. And I don't directly work with a nutritionist now. This will probably be my 4th or 5th fight in a row as a professional that I've done it completely all
at featherweight,
my own, by myself.
What would you normally walk around at?
I'd say 62 kilos would be my average.
It's got to lose 5-6.
5 kilos.
Yeah, 5 kilos. So
yeah.
So that's pretty manageable.
It's very manageable.
Yeah.
I do feel like I am a good size featherweight.
You mean when you're fighting? Or,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean being a a 57 kilo fighter that walks around at 62. I think that's a good size to be. I don't do anything dramatic to make the weight. I'm not dehydrating myself to a point that it's going to affect me.
Yeah. And it can.
It can. I can physically make super bantamweight, but I don't see why I would.
I've seen world champions, and one in particular, I won't say his name, who struggled to make featherweight in the men's, but got to featherweight and got hit on the chin and gone. He lost his Mexican hit him and his world title.
There's not enough fluid on the brain when you're doing those crazy weight cuts. So for me, it's just important to be within 3 kilos-ish at the start of fight week. I adjust my salt intake, my carb intake, my fiber intake, and the weight just falls off you in those few days. It's not real weight, but it's temporary weight that comes off just in time for the weigh-in. You weigh 57 kilos for about an hour, and then you
rehydrate and start eating. Yeah, it's interesting, and most of your audience won't know this, but like you would think, oh, stop eating meat, stop eating heavy stuff, and I'll eat vegetables. But the problem with vegetables is they hold water. And they sit in your gut. They sit in your gut. It's good for you, but like it holds weight. Yeah. And what you don't do is you so it sounds like you've got the science yourself. And
I have worked with nutritionists for a long time.
You've borrowed the science
learned from them,
and you've learned what works for you, and you put yourself through that process. Yeah. What about once you've finished a fight? I mean, I've always get intrigued with fighters when they finish a fight. A lot of fighters do different things. Some stop training and just give me cake and stuff like that.
I've definitely done a lot of that, and I've also learned a lot from that as well.
Well, now you're the world champion, so like it's everyone's going to want a piece of you. So and they're all going to be tapping you, and also the WBC, there's expectations as to who you'll fight, and you could sort of fight any time. You really can't take your foot off the pedal, can you? I mean, a little bit.
It's all about balance.
It's an intensity game.
I think as a young fighter, you've made weight, you've been dieting, you've been training really hard, the fight's over. You want to eat everything in sight. You think, I need to eat everything that I
deserve it.
I couldn't eat all of this stuff for 10 weeks and I'm going to start camp again and I'm not going to be able to have any of it again, and you like blow out. And I've definitely done a lot of that. I feel like now I live the life all year round.
So professional, truly professional.
Yeah.
But accepting it. You're not fighting against it. You actually accept it.
I actually enjoy this lifestyle better.
Yeah.
I definitely indulge and I enjoy the things that I have missed while I've been preparing for the fight, but kind of in a much more controlled way.
Yeah, so you don't overindulge.
Yeah, I don't overindulge, and I don't just go from training 2 or 3 times a day to sitting on the sofa or doing no exercise until I start camp again. Yeah.
Feet up.
Believe
Netflix.
me, I've done all of it.
Yeah.
I've done it all, and now like I realize how good physical exercise is and training is for me mentally and physically. That after a fight, I am still training. Well, not even training. I wouldn't even call it training, but I am exercising. I am going and doing different training, gym classes and Barry's boot camps and going for runs and just doing stuff that I enjoy and it makes me feel good. And when I start camp, I'm in so much of a better position. I feel so good starting. It's not starting again. It's not like you've just had weeks of eating shit, doing nothing, and your fitness levels have gone back to 0. And it's like that really hard fight at the start. That's why I only do a 10-week camp as well. I don't need any longer than that. I'm already starting camp in a really good place because I keep the body ticking over. I don't get too heavy in weight. I don't blow out and become a big fat alcoholic. Just like, do you know what I mean? Like I just, I enjoy the downtime in a way that's still going to positively affect my next training camp.
It's interesting. You keep. I mean, I keep getting in my mind that if I could sort of define you in terms of the way you're speaking is very purposeful in everything you do, and you're not putting yourself through the ringer. Because if you make it too hard for yourself, you're going to sort of resent it a bit. And sounds like you've adopted a lifestyle around your professional career, your athleticism, and what it requires for you to be this person at the top. Mm-hmm. You've said, well, that's my lifestyle.
Yeah,
I like being healthy. Mm-hmm. Is that sort of the summary? I mean,
definitely.
It's pretty simple.
I feel like you can feel in yourself. I know if I haven't exercised or trained, I feel like shit. I don't feel happy. I don't feel excited about life. And you go for a run, and your whole mood can change. And if you asked me that 3 years ago, like the thought of going for a run was the worst thing in the world. Like
because you associated with hard work and
I hate it. I'll never like running. You could never convince me to like running. I don't know how people like running. It's crazy. And now I'm like the biggest advocate for running. I love it. It's so good for you. Like the feeling when you're done, your whole day will change.
People like you fascinate me because I often wonder to myself, is this a genetic thing? Is it like in her genes or his genes to be this person? I'm not just talking about the talent, the natural athletic talent, but I'm talking about the mindset, the ability to put your mind to something. And of course, if you don't mind, if I just touch on it for a second, you do have you have had other family members or one other family member who was in your life. Mm-hmm. Who I don't think you ever met your brother,
no.
but he was a great fighter, a great boxer.
Yeah. How
much of that, if you don't mind me asking the question, it's an obvious question for me anyway. How much of that has influenced you to become a fighter?
Obviously,
and maybe you just tell a story first.
Yeah. So I had two brothers that passed away in a car accident in 1994. I was born in 1995. So I never ever met Jamie and Gavin. But I obviously grew up in a household that celebrated their lives every day. So I grew up hearing about these two amazing people that everyone I loved so much. And it's such a strange thing to try and explain to someone, but I feel like I knew them too because I've grown up learning so much about everything they did. They were 10 and 22.
22 years of age and 10 years of age.
Yeah. And just the way they are celebrated in my household and by family and friends, the way they talked about their personalities, who they were as people, what they did, I feel like I know them and I knew them. It's really, really hard to explain in words. But I feel like I lost them just like that everyone else did.
And it was a car accident?
Yeah, car accident. It was like a Tuesday night on the way to boxing training in a storm in the Gold Coast.
Was it the younger brother? Was he also doing boxing?
Yeah, they were going to boxing training together.
Right.
Yeah, so Jamie was 22, arguably one of the best amateur boxers to ever come out of Australia.
I remember.
Was ranked number 1 in the world as an amateur. Commonwealth Games medalist, Olympian.
As yourself.
Yeah, school teacher. All by 22 though. Like that's impressive.
Wow.
He was fighting men at the Men's World Championships at 17 years old and won Australia's first ever Men's World Championship medal. I won Australia's first ever Women's World Championship medal. I think I was like 21. So it was pretty impressive what he did.
Yeah, bloody oath.
He did, yeah. He had some pretty impressive stats for a 22-year-old.
And when I knew you were coming in today and I was thinking about you and I was thinking about him, I was wondering to myself, sort of going back to my question, I was wondering to myself, is there a gene in her family, which is passed on by mum and dad obviously, that makes them fighters, or was Skye influenced by this romantic, because you never met him, but a romantic, I don't mean in a romantic sense, but a romanticizing about someone who was her brother or two brothers who she never got to meet. And the romanticism of it was so strong that it got her to become a fighter as well. I mean, I wonder about that. I thought to myself, is it just a genetic thing she's automatically going to do because that's what she's meant to do physically? Or was it, or it could be a combination of both, or was it because she wanted to meet him. And never got a chance to. And the best way to meet him is meet him at his skill, the thing he was known for, the thing you knew him for. What do you reckon it is? Have you ever thought about that?
I always grew up as a young child thinking I was so much like Gavin. So Gavin had started boxing. He was only 10, so you can only just start boxing at 10. I think he'd had maybe 8 or 9 fights, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, not in New South Wales.
Sorry, it's 14 in New South Wales, isn't it?
No, it's older. Yeah, you're not older in New South Wales. And a lot of people send their kid up there.
Yeah.
They train down here and they go on their box.
Yeah.
I know.
So Gavin had just started boxing, but he was very into like musical theatre and performing. He was like
drama.
Yeah, drama. He was really into the performing arts, and so was I growing up. So I kind of always felt like I had that connection with Gavin. I heard about how amazing Jamie was all the time as well, but I never really saw that same connection because boxing, seeing females boxing back then was like very, very, very rare, unheard of really, and it was never even something that was talked about or considered in the household.
Actually, it wasn't even great to watch, to be honest with you.
No.
But it is now, but then...
It's getting there.
Yeah, no, it is now. It absolutely is now. It's about rugby league, women's rugby league. It was pretty average, but now it's great.
Yeah.
And boxing is the same for females now.
So the thought of me ever being a boxer was just never something that was even ever considered in my household. So I did, as a younger child, always feel quite connected to Gavin in the sense that I loved being in musicals and drama, acting. And when I started going into the boxing gym, so my oldest brother, Alan, is a boxing coach. And we have a local boxing club in Yatala up in Queensland. And I was just finishing primary school.
You said they're like an Aussie, Yatala.
Yatala. The Yatala Battler.
If the English is Yatala.
Yeah.
Go on, sorry. I couldn't resist.
I was in the Christmas holidays between finishing year 7 and starting year 8, which at the time was the primary school to high school changeover. And I kind of just started going for fitness, confidence. There was definitely never anything in my mind that I would ever fight. But I really did enjoy the training and I was really enjoying going. And I was 12 years old and there was a couple of other boys the same age as me starting at the same time. So we were all training together and we started doing a bit of the partner work drills. Then it became sparring and they were getting ready to get their blue books and their medicals done.
Explain a blue book.
A blue book is your little record book. I don't know if
they have it in New South Wales.
Is it still the same thing?
Yeah,
now?
still have blue book. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
thought it'd be all electronic now.
No, you still have blue book.
But yeah, it's basically like your record book. It's your box rec in a little handwritten book.
Which you must have all the time.
Which you must have on you to weigh in, to fight, to get the doctor to sign off before you box. Anyway, I wanted a blue book. The boys were getting blue books. I've been doing all the same training as them.
Where's my blue book?
I've been sparring them. I'm just as good as them, if not better. I want a blue book. So it was almost a little bit of an argument / convincing mum and dad that I'm ready for a blue book and I want to do it, which I think they were quite shocked by. They knew I was going up there a couple nights a week, but they couldn't believe that their 12-year-old daughter actually wanted to go to the boxing tournaments, weigh in and potentially fight. My brother convinced them. He said, you got to watch her. She's actually really good. There's glimpses of Jamie in her, same southpaw stance, counter boxer. She'll be fine. And mum and dad, don't worry. Like, what are the chances of there being another 45 kilo 12-year-old girl at the show? Like, keep her happy. She's enjoying coming to the training. Lo and behold, first weigh in, another girl there, 45 kilos. She's had 5 fights. I don't care. Put me in, mum and dad. I'm ready. Had my first fight and never ever looked back. I won.
You clean her up? Good on you.
I won. We ended up fighting each other 10 times.
Whoa.
Between the ages of 12 and 18 because there wasn't many girls. We boxed. Yeah, we boxed. She's probably the one girl I boxed 10 times. A few others came close. There was a couple I boxed 8 times, 6 times, but boxed each other 10 times.
That's 30 rounds.
Yeah.
And rounds.
Over the years. Actually, there was a couple of 4 2-minute rounds in
really?
there
Yeah,
when it
4-2s.
changed to youths. Yeah. It changes all the time, but basically before the women went to 3-3s, the women were 4-2s. So
Right.
our last fight was 4-2s when we were 17, 18 years old. But yeah, from that date, it was February 2008. I don't think I've ever spent more than a few weeks out of a boxing gym. And I couldn't imagine my life have gone any other way.
Because
But
you said to me, one of the things that helps you out or you work with is your why.
Yeah.
Why do you do it? Why do you fight for a living?
I just love boxing.
But
I
what is
really
it about
love
it?
boxing. I love winning. I love the feeling of at the end of the fight, all of that hard work paying off. I love the
Sense of
challenge.
achievement? Sense of achievement?
Sense of achievement, definitely.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's more of just like a deep love for boxing, for the sport of boxing. I love the art of boxing.
That's important, the art of boxing.
Yeah.
The
that
skill of
hit
boxing.
and not get hit.
Yeah.
That's the perfectionist in me a little bit. I get annoyed if I get hit a couple times, which is quite funny as a professional boxer. But I actually get annoyed with myself if I get caught with shots.
Do you describe yourself as a counterpuncher?
Yeah. I think we're slowly becoming a more all-round fighter.
Which means you push forward and you put a bit of pressure on people.
Yeah, we've got tricks in the trick bag if we need them. But
Yeah.
I think I'm always going to naturally be a counterboxer. I think we're becoming a more aggressive counterboxer. There's a lot more punches being thrown now.
In that you step back on, are you saying you get back on your back foot and then you throw more
I
more
apply
punches?
pressure
Yep.
without punching,
Yep.
causing them to commit to punching, and then I make them miss and then I make them pay.
Right. And
It's
you're,
beautiful.
And throwing punches and bunches. You're not just throwing, when you said
Exactly.
you throw more punches.
So yeah, we've been really trying to develop punch output, especially in this
Yeah.
camp, instead of just single shots going through the gears, putting more combinations together, being more aggressive.
So
yeah.
just explain to your audience something here for a moment. Because as I said earlier, a lot of people have never fought. So often we see a fight and we think, and you hear the commentators and they're saying, well, he's just throwing like a jab and maybe 1-2. And then the commentators will say, look, you've got to throw more than that. You've got to throw, 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, punches and bunches. And they often say that. How hard is it when you get back to your corner and you sit down on I'm assuming you do sit down.
I don't.
You sit on your stool.
I stand.
You stand. Okay,
Yeah.
you stand up. And your trainer says to you, mate, you got to get more busy.
Yeah.
Because, they're out.
Heard that a few times.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, well, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How hard is it for you to do that? Like, to apply that? I mean, because just explain what's going on in your head at that time. And sometimes, you're sort of out, strategy can be whatever it is.
Yeah.
Once you're in the middle of the ring and especially if you get touched up a bit, the whole strategy goes out and you've got to start making a plan as you go. And then you get to the corner saying, breathe. And then they're saying, you got to throw more punch. You got to get more aggressive. What do you do to yourself? What are you doing? Especially in the latter rounds where you're starting to get a bit of, fatigue.
I think you have to listen to your corner and you have to trust your corner. You have to trust your team. So if they're saying you need to do more, you need to do more. I think the perfectionist in me, as I said before, can sometimes be a curse. I'm in that fight constantly and consistently assessing everything, every millisecond.
Of your opponent.
Of my opponent, what she's doing, what I'm doing. And if I let 3 or 4 shots go, there's a chance that I'm going to be open to her landing a shot for a few seconds longer than if I just throw 1 or 2 and then get out again and reset.
Yeah. So
there's a lot of thinking and assessing going on all the time.
Can you overthink it though? I mean, can you as a person?
Yes, you can. And I think
as a perfectionist.
Yes. And I think that's something that has been something that we've really, really worked on, especially in this camp, to not overthink those situations.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to bite down
Yeah.
and go for it.
And that's when sparring, that's what you practice. Because a lot of
That's
people
what we're
refer to
practicing.
training, but I like to refer to it as practice.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a better word.
Yeah.
And you're practicing your craft.
Yes. It's been a process, especially with me being such a perfectionist, to now be at the point where it's happening naturally and I'm not having to overthink that process. And
It's more instinctive.
it's more, it's happening off instinct now, which has been such a positive, I guess, outcome from this training camp. Stuff that I've had to force and be quite uncomfortable doing for so long, in sparring over the last couple of years, to now it just being there naturally and happening on its own, so that in the fight, if I'm in a position where I need to do those things, it's all there and it's going to happen naturally for me, and I'm not going to have to spend energy thinking and over-assessing, how do I do this perfectly? Because it's just going to be there and it's just going to happen.
Can you think to yourself back when you were 14 and you went off to, I think you said Russia,
Yeah.
as a small crew, and Cambo, George was there, and now you and he are, is it a co-main event?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you the co-main event at Kudos, you're doing on Aussie soil, which is fantastic. Do you reckon you ever thought to yourself, did you ever think to yourself, and maybe, or what point in your career did you ever think to yourself, I'm going to be the world champion, and I think I can be the world champion and be doing co-main events with guys like George Kambosos, etc.
It's
pretty freaky.
It is. I have pinch me moments all the time,
Yeah.
where I think back to little me.
14-year-old me.
Yeah. And just like how I had absolutely no idea the journey that was going to unfold. Even 20-year-old me. It's crazy. Like 20-year-old me hadn't been to the Commonwealth Games, Olympics.
But you did
turn
do those.
Professional. And I go on and do all of those things, become a world champion. And I had no idea. I just loved boxing. I still love boxing. But I just loved the sport so much. I loved the challenge. I loved the pressure, the expectation. I don't know. There's something about it that just pushes me. And moments like Saturday night, walking out into that arena on home soil, undefeated fighter versus undefeated fighter for the WBC world title. Like, it's just goosebump moments.
I think it's going to be fantastic. I've always wanted to, excuse me, I've always wanted to ask, I have asked many people this same question, but the transition, you mentioned Commonwealth Games, Olympic Games, an amateur career, the transition from amateur to professional, and I must say I'm not that familiar with female amateurs, but male amateurs into professional, there's a big difference between the style.
Yeah.
Like ask Harry Garside,
Yeah.
I mean, like they jump in and jump out. Like it's
Yeah.
about tapping and points and stuff like that. It's not much inside. What was your transition like?
I think I went into the professionals very, what's the word? Blasé about the transition. I'll be sweet.
Yeah.
I'll just do what I do in the amateurs, in the pros.
Yeah.
It worked for the first few fights, to be fair.
Yeah.
But as the fights got more serious, I wasn't doing 6-rounders anymore or 8-rounders anymore. I was doing 10-rounders. I was fighting for belts. And I was fighting real professionals who were not going to be fazed by my tapping and moving.
Yeah.
I had a hard learning fight. I won't say which one.
Okay.
But I had a hard learning fight where a flick switched.
Switch flicked.
Switch flicked.
Yeah, switch flicked.
Where a switch flicked. And I realised I need to actually listen to my coaches and be open to learning how to fight like a professional. change my style.
Explain what that means, though. What do you mean by fighting like a professional? What's the difference?
Change my style, change my approach.
To what, though? To change your style to what?
This isn't just point scoring amateur boxing anymore. This is sitting down on your shots, hurting your opponent, punching with spite.
Being prepared to cop it back.
Yes, without over-assessing it. And yeah, I think after that fight, I realized that's what I needed to do, and I needed to go all in on my pro career. That was also when I decided I wasn't going to go back to the amateurs and do the Olympics, because obviously my first year as a pro, I still had my sights set on going back for Paris 2024. It was kind of a bit of a time filler for me to turn professional. It wasn't really ever something I was excited about. That quickly changed. I absolutely fell in love with professional boxing. I fell in love with the lights, camera, action side of it. I love
it's a much bigger event.
Yeah, the excitement of it all. And when it was time to make that final decision, if I was going to go back to the national team, come back to Australia, go through the qualifying processes.
Because there's only 2 year turnaround between the previous Olympics because of COVID.
And the qualifying process. Yeah. I had basically got myself into a position where I was 1 fight away from being mandatory for Amanda Serrano, who at the time was undisputed in the featherweight division. And my goals had changed. And that meant working very hard in the gym to make myself a professional fighter and not an amateur boxer anymore.
There's a big difference. I mean, it'd be good just to. How did you feel about that transition? Like, I know that you just sort of explained it, but
it's been a process.
It's a mental transition, isn't it?
There was a mental transition,
mentality.
Definitely. I think that fight that I was speaking about changed something in me mentally, where I realized I can't just get away with boxing and point scoring and picking single shots and moving away. And I realized I was going to be in real fights against real professionals who are coming to fight. They're going to be there all night, and that style of point scoring and punching and moving away all the time wasn't going to work anymore, and I did have to stand and fight. Not all the time, because I'm not a brawler. I'm not going to stand and have a
toe-to-toe.
Yeah, have a toe-to-toe, especially when that would play to my opponent's strengths more than my own. I wouldn't do that. But time and place for things. And I think since that moment, it's been all about adding tricks to the trick bag. And I feel like it's been a long process, but we're there. I feel like we're getting closer all the time to being the full package, an all-round fighter that can do it all. I can stand toe-to-toe and fight. I can box and move. I can apply pressure with or without punches. I can set the pace of the fight. I can stay in control of the pace of the fight. All of these things, that has been a really big work in progress with my team. And I feel like it's all coming together perfectly for this big fight.
So, and last week or about a week or two before, His Excellency Turki.
Turkey, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say Turkey, but you say Turkey, well, I say Turkey. Made a big announcement.
Yeah.
And you're potentially one of the beneficiaries of these types of announcements. I know that Joe has been fought in those Riyadh environments. I know that George is pretty excited about it. It's about people being properly rewarded for the effort they make as boxers. How do you feel about that announcement? And also Dana White now sort of helping him manage it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can only be good for boxing. I think they're looking at a whole new league system approach to boxing, which could be refreshing, I'm sure. I hope that we're going to see more women's boxing included. It's been quite absent from Riyadh season, which has been quite disappointing. for the women's boxing community globally.
Is that? I didn't know. I didn't realize that. So there hadn't been a lot of women fights.
Literally only my one fight.
Right. That's it.
Yeah.
Wow.
On any Riyadh season card.
Is that because they're looking for a certain type of level? Do you think?
I don't think that, because there's big women's fights happening around the world, and they're not being put on that platform, which has been quite disappointing.
Well, Dana's pro women UFC fighters,
He
very much
is.
so, and
So
it's pretty even.
I see that as quite a promising thing, hopefully, for women's boxing, and I hope that their league, the TKO thing that they've announced, is going to include women boxing and women fighters, because I think women's boxing was in a really, really good place a couple of years ago, and it's kind of going through a little bit of a lull right now. So yeah, I think it's an exciting time for boxing, but for women's boxing too, hopefully.
So given that, and I know that, as you said, I think the announcer is going to be called TKO. I mean, I'm wondering if TKO is going to be equivalent to WBC, WBO, IBF, blah, blah, blah,
It's
WBA.
seeming like that, yeah.
And as the UFC, the unified one, do you ever see yourself, is it a dream of yours to unify your position?
Of course. I'm known as the future undisputed.
So,
I want all the belts.
Yeah, so who would be your, subject to what happens on Saturday, who would be your next dream opponent?
Well, I've been banging on the door of Amanda Serrano for 2.5 years. She was the undisputed champion at featherweight. We got into mandatory position with the WBC. She vacated the belt and has shown zero interest in a fight with me, which is frustrating. She vacated another belt recently, who it's now being held by a German fighter, Nina Meinke. So there's always an option there to pick up a second belt in the division.
What did you say it was? Is it what?
She's got the IBF. I think she's got the IBF.
Right.
Anyway.
You want to have all the belts, though.
Yeah. My full focus is on the 22nd of March and defending the WBC belt.
Correct. I get it.
But looking forward, there is a belt being held by a German girl. She is a southpaw as well.
Wow.
Which makes for an interesting fight.
Have you fought many southpaws?
Amanda Serrano is also a southpaw.
Wow.
I have fought many southpaws, not as a professional, only one as a professional, but I've fought many southpaws in my 150 amateur fights.
That's a big amateur career, by the way.
One of the biggest
That's
female
a big
amateur
amateur
careers in the world.
Even for a boy. That's a big amateur
It's a lot
career.
of fights.
Yeah. I mean, Tim Zhu had nothing like that. I mean,
No.
Tim might not have had 50. I'd say he probably had 20 amateur fights.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
Yeah.
Would many of your other, any of the other girls holding in different protocols like WBA, WA, IBF, et cetera, would they have had the same amateur careers as you?
Not many in the world have.
That's a huge amateur career.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was so large. That's amazing.
I think still to this day I've had the most fights as a female amateur out of Australia. But I'd be up there in probably at least in the top 10, but maybe even top 5 in the world, how many fights I've had.
And what do you think that, you look at Costas or someone like that who had I don't know, like in
my
those
brother
days.
had 300 and something.
I was going to say Costas had something like 300.
Yeah.
When you say, what does a long amateur career, or a dense amateur career, do for a fighter who then becomes a professional? Because everyone used to say Costa, had an unbelievable long amateur career in the Soviet Union, and he had to fight people from every country just about.
Yeah.
And then they used to say that's his baseline. That's what gives him his foundation.
Yeah.
What do you think your long amateur career or your dense amateur career gave to you? Because
same thing, I believe. Yeah. You're fighting in tournaments constantly. You don't have any say in who you fight. You're getting in there with whoever the draw puts you with. You're fighting different styles day after day, back to back.
You should explain it because that's important. You just know one fight and
it's
you do another
It's not the professionals where you do a 10-week camp for one exact style, one person.
Explain
you go into a tournament, you weigh in that morning, you fight that afternoon, you win, you weigh in again the next morning,
so you
fight someone else who won yesterday.
You don't put the weight back on.
No, it's very, very different. And I feel like having all those fights, I've seen it all. I've seen nothing Tiara Brown could bring next on Saturday that I haven't seen before, because I've fought every kind of style, shape, size, tall, skinny girls with arms longer than my legs, short, stocky, strong girls that can punch like a mule.
Yeah, volley over. Yeah.
Left-handers, right-handers, switch dancers, all of it. I've seen it all. I've been in there with all of them.
So is confidence a really important point to you? Like, is that a confidence factor, or is it actually, I'm confident because I built skills around having fought just about every style and size and whatever?
I think it definitely gives me more confidence, knowing the pedigree, knowing that I've done it all. I've been there. I've seen it. I've been in there with the best of the best. I've fought Olympic champions, world champions, beat Olympic champions, world champions. I mean, my confidence mainly comes from my preparation, knowing myself, knowing I haven't taken shortcuts, knowing I've trained smart. That's a big thing in my team that we constantly talk about. It's easier to overtrain than undertrain. And same with the whoop and the stats on there. We're all about training smarter rather than harder, because every fighter wants to train as hard as they possibly can. And it's so easy to burn out. It's so easy to overtrain and not bring your best self. So there's days where I really want to train and go for it, and I'm pulled back. But I know it's for the greater good. It's that balance. And I feel like all of those little things, all of those 1% is what gives me the confidence to go into the fight knowing you can't beat me, because I'm my best me, and my best me doesn't get beat.
The foundation of 150 amateur fights is amazing. And as you say, you fought at every level, so Com Games, Olympics, state, blah, 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 worlds. So you have this great foundation, which I think maybe when you get to the rounds, hopefully it doesn't go this far, but like, you get in early, but like as you get longer in the rounds and you start to get a bit of fatigue, that's when that foundation becomes really important. I mean, apart from your prep, your 10-week prep, that foundation is critical. Mm-hmm. Like I've seen lots of fighters who haven't got that foundation and they can fall apart a little bit.
Come undone.
Yeah, they totally, because boxing's a mind game.
Yeah.
You are there, as you said earlier, you are the only person in the middle of that square, and it's just you.
Boxing's 90% mental.
Yeah.
The physical preparation is important, but it's when you're in that fight, it's 90% mental.
And it seems to me that you are, like to me right now, you are mentally perfectly prepared. And I've seen other fighters where I interviewed quite a few of them last week for Fox Sports, and I just watched the outcomes, and I know that they weren't really mentally ready. They were projecting mental readiness, so projecting readiness, but I could just tell.
Yeah.
And I remember when George Kambosos walked out of down the pathway thing there towards the ring, and when he fought Lopez, there was a look in George's eye, and I said to someone, I was watching the fight, and I on telly, and I said to someone, "Wow, he looks like he's going to win this."
Yeah.
He just had the look.
Yeah.
I don't want to go over all the bullshit about the eye of the tiger, but he did have that
the
look.
eye of the tiger.
He did have that look. He had that look.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at you now. You're giving me that feeling.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm pretty good at assessing people. Like, I've been around a long time, so I've done a lot. You're giving me that look. Do you feel that person, or am I just imagining because I want the Aussie to be the killer?
I feel it.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see the confidence in you.
I think
I hate to play you cards.
I think a lot of people think I put out this persona of confidence, but it's not.
It's not arrogance.
It's not arrogance. It's being so self-aware and having no doubts in everything I've done. I know myself so well.
And you're not bullshitting yourself because you got the foundations there to fall back on.
If you bullshit yourself, it's only you in the ring, like I said.
Yeah, you get found out.
You get found out.
Yeah.
I'm not going to embarrass myself like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to let myself down. I'm not going to let my team down.
And by the way, your country.
Not going to let my nation down.
Yeah, your country's barracking for you.
So you wouldn't put that out there knowing deep down that you hadn't done the right things. You hadn't prepared properly. You weren't bringing your best self.
I love that.
You wouldn't put that out there.
Yeah, you're bringing your best self, or the best version of Skye Nicolson is going to be brought on Saturday night into that ring.
And the best version of Skye Nicolson does not get beat by anyone. Not by Tiara Brown, not by any featherweight female on the planet.
Well, that'll do me. That's awesome. Thanks very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
luck.
you.